everybody judges you by how
Yeah.
you sound. And
Yes.
that's another thing about voice is you at least want to present yourself in that authentic way. And an authentic voice, at least in my experience, particularly for women, is a bit lower, is a bit richer, is a bit bolder than what they're used to using.
Mm.
Why they don't use their authentic voice, now that I have found to be very interesting when I start to unpack that a little bit
Yeah.
with some of the younger women. And I think it goes back to their childhoods where a girlish or breathy or Barbie doll voice got the attention they needed or the somehow the approval that they needed, and now they still hide behind those voices, and that's not natural to them. It was something they needed to do at the time to I worked with one woman who said she grew up in a rather dysfunctional household and a lot of yelling going on, and she just tried to be the peacemaker. So her voice would rise as she would just try to go from situation to situation to put out the fires. And when we worked on where her natural pitch was, it wasn't there. And once she started using it regularly, she actually said to me, this has been healing. Have you found the same in your
Yeah.
work? You do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible, isn't it? Because it's so deep within us.
Yeah.
And as you say, a lot of the way that we speak and we communicate goes way back. And it served us back then, but it doesn't serve us now.
No.
And I had a similar thing with, I was teaching a Find Your Voice workshop, and I had a former teacher. She was retired at this point, but she came in just because she needed more confidence around her voice. But she'd been a teacher for 30 years, 40 years. And I was sort of trying to get her to speak, use different levels of her voice. So to sort of go through and play with it, just play with the different woices. And I said to her, well, maybe do this with more authority, really sort of give me that really deep authoritative voice. And she said, oh, I can't use that voice. So what do you mean you can't use that voice? She said, oh, my mum told me when I was a child not to use that voice because I sounded like Peggy Mount, who is an actress over here from the 50s, I think, who was like a real battle axe,
Oh,
she was sort of this caricature of a British battle axe. And so she never used that voice. She never used a deep authoritative voice. And yet she was a teacher.
hmm.
And you think, well, how did you manage to go through that career? But yeah, at the end of that, and I've several students come up and say it was like therapy. It's just a release and a relief to be able to use
Even
and find their own voice.
and even for men, I have found well, and for my anchors particularly, they often adopt a voice that they think they should
Yeah,
sound like. Whoa, 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 back up. No, no, no. We're going to find who you really do sound like, and you're not imitating anyone. You can admire them, but let's not imitate them. So, even for the young men I have worked with, there has been some sort of release for them that they don't have to invent something,
yeah,
that that natural voice is there. And when it's paired with the right connection to words and the right connection to their audience, well, hello, that's
yeah,
how it's supposed to be. And
yeah.
that has so it's two different two different problems that have kind of almost the same basis.
Yes. Obviously, I come from an acting background,
Mm.
so the way that I work with people with their voice is very much around sort of the way they story tell, and that again is finding something quite vulnerable within themselves to actually share, and that can be quite cathartic in a way,
Sure.
and finding those stories. So when I talk about being authentic with my clients, it's really around uh, finding out who they are. So it's not just about the voice. It's about, when I go back to the acting, it's about finding the motivation. It's about being. I mean, in terms of acting, it's about being the character rather than playing the character.
Right.
And I think that sounds similar to those anchors that you're talking about that are pretending or playing at being an anchor rather than just being themselves in that moment.